Morning, we're going to talk about Elijah the Tishbite, was his name. When you've had enough. I know some of you are probably thinking that that's where you at this morning. And if you think I speak with much wisdom at the end of this message, you'll know that maybe I've been here myself. We can learn so much from Elijah the Tishbite. Lacey, raise your hand. Everybody know who you are. Raise your hand. Lacey right here. It was real cold, whatever night it was. She had her little baby and had Kenzie and her little girl, and they were up on Jonesboro Road shopping. She pulled up to get gas. Her battery was dead. Wasn't cranking. So Jesse calls me. I'm sitting there having a conversation with Megan at home, and she said they broke down. They need somebody to jump them off. And I was like, well, why don't they get out and ask somebody to jump me off? We don't live in that world no more. So I grabbed my jumping cables and went up. She's got a newer Chevrolet. I should have called Jim. I wanted to pour something in the radiator to make the battery crank. No, I'm just kidding. But I get there, and man, it's going to be easy. No problem. Whoop around there, right up in front of the vehicle, hook mine up on the side of the van. I pop that Chevrolet hood, and I look under there, and I'm like, where's the battery? I'm looking everywhere, all down in there, everywhere, all the way around. I kept fiddling. I popped a little thing off the front. I said, the battery's got to be here somewhere. Where's the battery? So it's freezing outside. So I jump in the car, and I said, Lacey, you got a manual here. You're going to Google where this battery's at. And then after she Googled it, I saw a little thing sticking up, just one little thing sticking up that was the hot wire. And when I got back out and looked at the front of the motor, I looked at it, and it said, you hook it right there on that wire, which is sticking up. You don't see no battery nowhere, nothing that even resembles a battery. And then it says, with the black cable, you got to find your own ground wire. And, I already don't like electricity as it is. What do you mean I got to find my own ground? Find something to ground, So I'm hunting for something, and it's taking forever. But I finally found it. And then we tried and we tried and we tried, and come to find out I wasn't hooked up exactly right. Then we eventually, once I got it hooked up right, it cranked right up. And I said all that to say this. They don't make them like they used to. Same way with Elijah the Tishbite. They don't make them like they used to. But there's no reason why we can't be like Elijah, because James 5 tells me that he was a mere man just like me and you. It tells us that with just language that we can understand. There was nothing supernatural about this man. He had blood flowing through his veins just like me and you did, but God used this man to pray and do some extraordinary things. Elijah, we pick up 1 Kings 19. Not going to read it all, but going to read a little bit to get us started here. It says, now Ahab, this is after the miracle of everything that he had accomplished, one right after another, not raining, showing that the God of Israel was the one true and only God. Now Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done, and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so may the gods do to me, and even more, if I do not make your life as the life of one of them by tomorrow at this time. And he was afraid, and arose and ran for his life, and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. And he left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree, and he requested for himself that he might die. And what did he say? He said, "It is enough. This is enough. I've had enough. God, just go ahead and take my life, because I know that they're coming to take my life. I know it's over, so God, just go ahead and just take my life." Elijah, I would say, if you were asking me to name the greatest prophet in the Old Testament, there's no doubt I'd put Elijah right there, top of the list, hands down, even though there were a lot of great prophets in the Old Testament. But did you know that Elijah, out of all the prophets in the Old Testament, is mentioned 28 times in the New Testament? So I think that it's such a special significance upon him as a prophet over all the other prophets, as he was mentioned so many times, because God used him in an extraordinary way. He was just an ordinary man, but yet God did extraordinary things through him. He was the one that got down on his knees and he prayed that the heavens would be shut up and no rain would come out. And for 3.5 years, there was a drought in the land and it did not rain. This same man got down on his knees and crouched on top of the mountain and prayed earnestly that God would open up the heavens and that it would rain again. And he prayed fervently, and he prayed, and he prayed, and then he looked up and he saw a cloud the size of a man's hand. And he knew the rain was coming, and the heavens opened up, and it poured rain. He was the one that stood there with the Baal gods and the one true God. And he put on this magnificent display, and he prayed, and when he prayed, fire came from heaven and consumed the altar that he had there and dried up all of the water that he allowed the Baal gods that were idolizing them to throw on there to make it extra, extra hard for God. But yet he prayed, and fire came from heaven, and God was displayed in one of the most glorious ways ever. Elijah was one who stood boldly in a time of idolatry. When everybody else was turning away from God, he stood for God. And even during this drought for 3.5 years, he's in the wilderness, and God takes him to a brook, and by that brook he was fed from the ravens day after day after day. This was a man who knew how to depend on God. This was a man who knew the provisions of God, the faithfulness of God, the goodness of God. If nobody else knew it, Elijah knew it, because he had witnessed it for himself. Elijah goes and finds a mentor, someone he can mentor to be able to take his place, and God leads him to a man by the name of Elijah. And after Elijah hangs out with Elijah for a period of time, what he wanted more than anything was a double portion of the anointing that God had poured upon Elijah. He wanted that upon his life. He wanted double of that, because he could see such a mighty life and a mighty ministry. Elijah was one of the few in the Old Testament that did not see death. The Bible says he was taken up into heaven. It says that chariots of fire and horses of fire and a whirlwind showed up out of heaven and took him up and swept him right up into the presence of the Lord. We're going to learn in just a minute, which I think is the most extraordinary thing about what I'm going to tell you this morning, is here Elijah is up under the juniper tree. He's depressed. He's alone. He's fearing for his life. This great man of faith who had done all these mighty wonders is completely burned out, and he is thinking he is about to die. And did you know the very thing that he thought was going to happen under that juniper tree actually never happened? Elijah did not die. And not only did he not die a physical death, he was swept right on up into heaven, into the presence of the Lord, with never having to experience the physical death that he thought he was going to have to experience. Yet this man had a breaking point. Maybe you got one this morning. He had a breaking point to where he lost his way. And he says, I've had enough. Can't take it no more, Miriam. I can't take it no more. I've had enough. Maybe some of you might be there today. It's called a stress meltdown, to where things in life just happen. Maybe it's one thing, maybe it's a series of things that just brings you to a point in your life that is unlike any other point, to where you're literally melting down. And if you look and you read back the previous chapters and you see this man, Elijah, you're like thinking there's no way this can be the same man. There's no way that this was the same man that prayed and it didn't rain, prayed and the heavens opened up, prayed and fire fell out of heaven. This can't not be the same man. But it was. He was filled with doubt and fear. And to make it even worse, he was fearing a woman by the name of Jezebel. And it caused him to go into great despair, and he lost hope. And you know what? When you lose hope, you lose motivation. And he just sat there filled with such self-pity. He just said, I've had enough, God. It's over. Just take my life. And he would go on to say, you know, I've been the only one out here serving you anyway. Everybody else has bowed to the Baal gods, and I alone am left out here to serve you. But yet, God told him no. There were still hundreds that had not bowed to the Baal gods. But yet, that's what the enemy does when we're in the middle of a meltdown. He fills us with such self-pity that we think we're out there all by ourselves, having to do it all, having to make everything happen, when yet that's not the case at all. Let's go through this. First of all, when we burn out, and that's exactly what Elijah did. He burned out. It is possible to burn out, and that's why you got to be on guard. Because if it can happen to Elijah, it can happen to anybody, to where you just burn out. The demands of life could be choices that you've made, but you just wind up running yourself in the ground. And that's what Elijah did. All this that he was going through, and the problems and the circumstances that he was having to deal with, just eventually just took a toll on him, and it just ran him into the ground. Now, maybe you're there this morning. Maybe it could be because, you know, a lot of times it's right off the heels of major victory and success. That's where Elijah was. I mean, he had just prayed that it would rain. It was right off of God displaying himself with being the one true God over the Baal gods, and then opening up the windows of heaven, and the drought being over, and it raining, and Elijah slaying the 450 prophets of Baal. And now here he is, right off of that victory and success. He just slayed 450 by himself. And he's about to run in fear because a woman made a threat on his life. a lot of times right off major victory, we go straight to the valley. Maybe because we just lose focus momentarily. Doesn't take long. All it takes is the enemy just getting a little opportunity. It could be off a major loss. Maybe there's financial loss, a relationship loss. Maybe it's a loss of someone that you loved. Could be off of failure and defeat. It could be because of physical illness that has caused you to burn out, and you're filled with self-pity, and you just want it to all be over. It could be about just worrying about the future, how you're going to make it, how you're going to pay the bills, how are you going to retire one day, just worried about it all, what could happen, what might happen, what could be around the corner, what could be through that door. And just like Elijah, all of those could be's and might be's, the majority of the time, never come to be. So they wind up beating us down in the present moment because we're focused on the might be's and the could be's. But if you are there, you're drowning this morning. You're drowning this morning, and you're burning out this morning spiritually and emotionally and physically. You're just drained. You're just depleted. Burned out means to be empty. It means to be devoid of motivation. You know, an excessive stress does that to us. It takes our mojo away, and that worrying and feelings of dread and doubt and fear just overtake you. So when we burn out, second of all, we shut out others. So these are going to kind of go together. When we burn out, we shut out others. Now, if you're just reading through the text, you might not see it the first time. But I want to draw your attention to it. Notice verse number 3. And he was afraid and arose and ran for his life and came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah. What did he do? He left his servant there. You know, when you're burned out, the last thing you need to do is to be by yourself. I'm not saying that you need to put yourself in the middle of a crowd, but that is the most natural thing. And I know, I've been there. I can speak with experience here. When we burn out, we shut out others. And even if you can't shut them out all the way of being in their presence, you shut them out of your life. You shut them out of your struggles. You shut them out of the feelings that you're feeling, the hopelessness and the dread and the fear of being afraid and not knowing what's around the corner and not knowing what tomorrow brings. And it just keeps coming and it just keeps coming. And you shut other people out, and all you can hear is the enemy shouting lies. What lies does he start telling you? It's over, Pastor Jeff. You're not going to recover on this one. You're not going to make it through this one, Pastor Jeff. You can't win. You can't beat this one. It's over. You need to be afraid. You're not coming out as a conqueror. You're going to go down all the way. You see, what happens is when you shut yourself off from others because you are burned out, the only one that has your ear is yourself and the enemy. And if yourself and the enemy have your ear, guess what the enemy's going to do? He's going to keep pouring it and pouring it and pouring it. You know, you hear people say all the time, I can't believe that person did that. You know, whether you're watching a murder mystery or whatever, you just don't, you know, people that that we thought would have never taken their life or never committed some horrible crime. You just never know what somebody else is dealing with. And a lot of times when somebody is about to fall off the cliff, a lot of times we get to the edge, and a lot of people never even think a thought like that. But yet some people get to such a dark place and to a place of despair to where they start to have those thoughts, and they just think, like Elijah, it would just be better. I've had enough. I'm just ready for my life to be over with, and I'm ready to check out. And they wind up doing things that we never thought we would do because we're listening to those lies. You've been invaded with darkness and defeat and despair, and everything is gloom and doom. Let me show you. Notice some things here in this text. Notice verse 3. What does it say about him? It says, he was afraid. Verse 4, he went a day's journey into the wilderness, and he requested that he might die. He says, I've had enough. Take my life. And then he goes on to say, when he shut other people out, he says, I'm just like my ancestors. I'm just like all of those no good people who could never get it together. I'm just like they are. This was one of the greatest prophets ever to live in the Old Testament. Now saying that he was just like one of those that he thought he had broken the curse. But yet he's drowning in such self-pity that he says, I'm just like them. Notice verse 10. He says, I've been zealous for you, Lord, the God of hosts, for the sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I alone am left. And now they just want to kill me. You see, the majority of the time, the last thing we want to do is talk to somebody when we're struggling, especially at this point, because the general rule is we want to shut other people out. We don't want to let them in. But yet Elijah had someone in his life, it might not have been a big circle, but his servant had been there with him from the beginning. And his servant would have been quick to tell him the truth, that it wasn't that way. You see, there's always somebody in your life that will speak the truth to you when you're listening to the lies of the devil. But if you don't let that person in and you isolate yourself during a time of burnout and you shut them out of your life, it's going to be harder for you to come back because you're isolating yourself at a place to where you are extremely vulnerable. What happens? When we burn out, we shut out others. Third of all, we speak out against others. It's natural. It is the most chain of events that you can just say, yes, it's exactly that way. We turn negative. Think about this great man of God. Just read that right there. Just read those verses again and listen to his negativity. Listen to how he is describing his people and everybody that's out to get him and describing his own life. He is putting such an attitude out there that is full of negativity and griping and striking out at others. And you know what? When you're down, even if you're not thinking about it consciously, because a lot of this stuff we do and we don't even realize we're doing it, when we're down, we want other people to be down with us. And I read something yesterday. I'd have to read a little bit more on it. But it said that when you reach this point, because I was studying this right here, burnouts, shutting out others. And then it said when we do speak out, we're actually speaking a lot of times against others and pointing out things that are in their life that's in our life. I mean, it's in our life, but we're sitting there pointing it out in their life like it's not in ours. And I think we don't even realize what we're doing sometimes. Now, notice how we speak out against others. Maybe you speak out against others sarcastically. I'm always very, very wary of people that use sarcasm all the time. Because sarcasm is a way of joking, especially until you really get to know somebody. But they could be trying to speak something ugly to you, but trying to do it in a way that is sarcastic, to where there's a little laugh with it. I know there was somebody that used to go to church here. I'll not say a name, but their whole language was sarcasm. But they were a very vulnerable person that had been hurt. And all of that sarcasm was just a way of dealing with their hurt, trying to point out in others what was in their life. So we do it sarcastically. And I'm not saying that sarcasm has always got hidden messages with it, but a lot of times we're hiding behind something trying to laugh when we're actually just being downright mean and ugly to somebody. We speak out against others not only sarcastically, but selfishly. It's hard when you get burned out and you shut others out not to be selfish. So it becomes about you, and you become you even become self-destructive. Like you start saying, I'm an idiot, I'm not any good, I'll never amount to anything. And then not only are you pointing it out about yourself, you could be the next one, you could be speaking out and striking out at others, telling them they're an idiot, telling them they're no good, because that's where you're at and that's what you feel, and you want them to feel what you feel, but yet they don't even know that you feel that. Because we're all in here this morning, and let's face it, I know, because I'd say it's probably 18 months to a 2-year period to where I got up here on this platform every week with a mask on my face, and you had no idea what I was struggling with, dealing with, going through the circumstance. You maybe could, everybody, you pick up something in a message and you're trying to like figure it out. No, I had a mask on. I just shut everybody out. I wouldn't let you in there. You think I'm going to come in here and let you in there? I wouldn't even let the closest people in there. I was out there, isolation, mania. So when I would come in here, you talk about stress. You talk about coming in here and having to put a mask on and act like I'm a people person. Act like, hey, how you doing, Janine? Love you. You had a good week? Yeah, I've had a great week. Just lying right out of my mouth. I was hurting. I was in pain. And I needed to talk about it. But everything told me not to. Because you're vulnerable. And you're always scared to death. If you tell somebody, you never know what you're going to get in return. And I'll be honest with you. I'm probably even more guarded because I've had so many people through the years that don't ever tell me you always have my back. Don't. Just don't. because you set yourself up. I can't tell you, anybody that's ever said they've always had my back has exited out that door with a knife in my back. And you want to know why I won't come in here and tell people anything? Why, it's always been known I won't let people in. And that's the reason. And yeah, everybody's had a knife. And I deserved a knife. A lot of times we deserve the knife in the back. But if we get that and we go through that and we're at a vulnerable point and we feel like that's how people get to their end. I mean, I just had a cousin, Tim's sister, school teacher, always laughing, always cutting up. It's been a few months ago, she takes her life out of nowhere. How do people get there? They get there because of hopelessness, of just thinking there's no way out. Don't give the enemy the opportunity, because if he doesn't take you there, he can take you so far out there that you'll be somebody that nobody would even recognize, even though you still might be physically alive. Number 4, the worst thing, we leave God out. So when we burn out, we shut out others, we speak out against others, and now we leave out God. We forget him, we turn away from him. We forget God, we forget about it. And notice Elijah here talking about Jezebel. Now this one, he sat by the brook. He lived by the brook for 3.5 years with a raven, not only bringing him bread, but bringing him meat. I mean, come on. I mean, God didn't even put him on a vegetarian diet. The raven brought him bread and meat. I mean, think about it. You out in the middle of nowhere all by yourself, by the brook, a drought full on, sun shining, baking down. There you are laying on the bank in the shade. Breakfast time, here come the raven. Lunch time, here come the raven. Snack time, middle of that, here come the raven. And this man now is scared of Jezebel. Scared of a woman. Scared of a woman. I'm scared of a lot of women too. We forget what he's done. He forgot about God. He forgot about that God that provided for him supernaturally. He forgot about that God that showed up when he was the first one in the Old Testament to raise a young child from the dead. He forgot about it when he showed up at the widow of Zarephath and told her to fix him something to eat. He forgot about all of those miracles that had taken place right before his very eyes. He forgot about God. He forgot about his gifts. He forgot about his goodness, his grace. You know, it's so easy to forget about God, isn't it? And it's so easy to get at that point to where all we're doing is talking ugly about others and for being filled with self-pity, and we forget about just how good God's been. We forget about his gifts that he's given us and his goodness even in the midst of difficulty. We forget about it. We forget. You remember God told the Israelites, I'm bringing you into a land that you didn't even till. I'm bringing you into a land that's got wells, and you didn't even have to dig these wells. I'm bringing you into a land that's flowing with milk and honey, and I'm going to bless you, and I'm going to provide for you, and I'm going to give to you from the left, from the right, from the back, from the front. I'm going to pour it out all on you. And he just gave them one warning. When you are filled and satisfied, beware, unless you forget the Lord your God. And some of us has been blessed to the point to where we don't even know the name Jehovah God anymore. It's Jehovah self. All about us. But yet, we leave him out when we need him the most. Some of you here this morning maybe have spiritual dehydration. That's where Elijah was at. He was burned out. He had a loss of strength. He had a deficit. And when you have a loss of strength and deficit, you have a loss of focus. His soul was now dominant, not his spirit. And anytime the soul is dominant over the spirit, then that's when the flesh shows up. That's when you try to control things and manipulate things. And then that's when the enemy is able to swoop in there and bring deception upon you. We all think that, there's no way the enemy's ever going to deceive me. I'll never, it's like what we were talking about last week, by saying our kids will never do this or they'll never do that. Yeah, they will. And you might with them. Because that deception, you might think it might never get wrapped around your mind and it might not ever get control of you, but all you got to do is give them the opportunity. And I guarantee you, that deception, that delusion, those lies, you can believe them. And he can lead you, once you do believe it, he can lead you wherever he wants to lead you. And then it leads you to soul despair. When we burn out, we shut out, we speak out, we leave out. And then this last one, and I don't mean this in this kind of way, we're pieced out. And when I say pieced out, I mean pieced out. No peace in the inside no more. No good, tranquil, calm, inner assurance that God has got you and that everything is going to be okay. Did you know that when there is peace in your life, look back in Philippians 4, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. And then it says, let your gentle spirit be made known to all men. Any time there is peace in your heart that God brings, it will always bring with it a trait in your life that is full of kindness and gentleness and a good, refreshing attitude of humility, which is the total opposite of everything we've talked about up to this point. That's what peace brings. You're respectful to others. You speak life. Whereas when there's no peace there's tension, there's strain, pressure, problems, difficulty, there's work, there's fear. You just know peace. And peace, what it gives you more than anything, is an inner assurance that the God who brought you here is the God who will bring you out of here. And the God who allowed you to be where you're at right now is the same God that will come in there and allow you to be able to get it back together and to be able to move from up under that juniper tree to the place of self-pity and doubt and fear, to get up on your feet and move again. But before you move, God will move in and give you what you need. Notice, first of all, God never leaves you. If you don't forget this, if you don't get anything else, get this one. God never leaves you. I don't care how bad you get. I don't care how many people you shut out. I don't care how many people you curse and cuss and speak death to. No matter what comes out of your mouth, no matter what it is that you do, no matter if you are filled with hopelessness and despair and even speak out against him, God never leaves you. Notice 5b to 7. He lay down, slept under a juniper tree, and behold, there was an angel touching him and said to him, Arise and eat. Then he looked up, and behold, there was at his head, here it is again, God supernaturally showing up. What did he bring him? He brought him a bread and cake, and it wasn't just bread and cake, it was baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and he drank, and what did he do? He lay down and he rested some more. And then notice, the angel of the Lord came again the second time and touched him. Arise and eat, for the journey is too great for you. In the midst of all of this that Elijah was saying, where was God? He was right there. That angel was sent from him to minister to him right there at a place of loneliness and despair. See, God knows what you need even when you don't know what you need. And there's one thing you can count on and take to the bank. God never leaves you. Second of all, God will always lead you back. Notice, angel of the Lord came again the second time, touched him, rise and eat, the journey is too great. So he arose, ate, and drank, and went in that strength of that food for 40 days and for 40 nights, right to Horeb, the mountain of God, right where God led him to go. Now, why did God lead him there? First of all, God never leaves you, and God always leads you back. You know, sometimes we get to a place in our lives and we think we will never come back. And if you listen to others, you might believe it, or if you listen to the enemy. But look at this story. God never leaves you, and God always leads you back. What he leads you back to might not be what you left, but he will lead you back so that you can get it back together again. Notice he goes on down. He came there to a cave and he lodged there. When he got to that cave, what happened? The word of the Lord came to him and said, now it's time. After he's let him know that he's still there and he's led him right to where he wants to lead him to, now it's time to really get down to where he needs to get down to. The word of the Lord came to him and saying, Elijah, why are you here? What are you doing? And notice, he said, I've been zealous for the Lord, the God of hosts. Sons of Israel have forsaken your covenant, turned down your altars, killed your prophets with the sword, and I am alone. They seek my life. So what is he doing? He's making him speak what it is that he is fearing on the inside. Now, you got to realize God is ministering to him here. So he's getting him to admit it. You know, when you're sitting in front of a counselor, I hate counseling. But majority of the time, you can just cut right to the core, and they want to get into all this, how you feel, what's this make you feel like. But I feel everything. I feel it all. This was the counselor, they want to get to your feelings. Just tell me your feelings. But this is what I feel. And that's what God's doing. He's, you know, but I'm a firm believer. If you cannot express your feelings of your problem that has brought you there, you can't win. You can't get victory over it. So he makes him speak it. And if you read the text, he'll actually speak it 3 times. He'll make him say it. Follow me now. God never leaves you. God always leads you back. And God whispers his love to you. Now, I put love here because notice verse 12. Notice what happens. This is the part of the story that most of us know. He's there in the cave. So, Lord, verse 11, go forth stand on the mountain before the Lord, and behold, the Lord was passing by. There was a great and strong wind, rendering the mountains and breaking in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, a sound of a gentle blowing. Entrance of the cave. And behold, a voice came to him and said, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" You go and you read that. The Lord wasn't in the extravagant and the miraculous. The Lord was just in the gentle breeze. See, a lot of times when we get to this point, we're looking for God to do something big. God's big sometimes is whispering in your ear. Because you know what? When he whispers in your ear, you hear him. His love. He loves you. Not only does he love you, he wants to speak life into you. God is where we don't think he is. Stop looking for something big. Stop asking God to bring an earthquake into your life and to move all this back into place. And just pay attention, because he is there. And he's going to pass by. And when he passes by, don't miss it. Don't miss it. 3 things you need to do. First of all, you need to rejoice in the Lord. You see, I don't care how many problems you got, how many difficulties you got, how many stacks of bills you cannot pay. You don't need to focus. I'm not saying your problems ain't real. They are. But your God is real too. And you need to rejoice, not in your circumstances. Rejoice in the Lord. The one who can change your circumstances. Rejoice in him. Second of all, reconnect with the Lord. That's what Philippians 4 says. It says, rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I say rejoice. And then it says, be anxious for nothing, but in everything, by prayer and supplication. You got to reconnect with God so you can hear his whisper. Then third of all, you can be reassured by the Lord. Notice it says there, verse 5 of Philippians, let your gentle spirit be made known to all men. There it is again, the Lord is near. Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer, supplication, let your requests be made known to God. There it is. And that peace that went out of your life will come back into your life. A reassurance that you might not know how. You might not know when, who, if, but you know he'll do it again. He'll do something in your life because he's a good God. He's a great God. He's a faithful God. He's the God who fed you when you had nothing to eat. The God who showed up for you when you prayed and you got down on your knees. He showed up and he worked miracles. And you know that you know that you know. You might not know how, but you know he's going to do something in your life and in your family and in your heart again. If you believe it, rise to your feet and give God the glory and praise him.